What have you found? So the concept of a user story, the software development space, is pretty well understood. It's pretty broadly, or at least, we've all heard those words, right? They sound familiar. But with a given customer, that may be like, okay, I know the word user and I know the word story. I don't have any idea what you're talking about, right? So what have you found to be the process or the path to getting a customer on board with defining user stories and reading user stories and providing relevant feedback?
So that's a good question. And I imagined another question that went with it that had a slightly different answer, but I'll get to that. My experience so far has been that because the user stories are so simple and they're generally pretty finite, if, for example, you were writing user stories for someone using an ATM machine, you would not have one user story that says a user can come up and perform all their banking so that they can get their cash and whatnot. That's too broad. That's the epic, right? The user story they need to be able to request cash. And here's the criteria for that. They need to be able to, another story would be that they need to be able to make deposits and stuff. So because they're so self-evident in their descriptions, I haven't had so far the experience, though I haven't been using them that long with clients. I've been using them internally, but not always with clients. But with clients, I haven't found them to not have questions. Where I have had issues is that clients don't always recognize when maybe something's missing, right? Where you've shared the user stories and they don't bother to ask, well, what did you mean by comfortable chair, right? Hopefully the user story is better than that, but not all experiences go as planned. But generally speaking, they get it. They understand it. In fact, in the example that I gave, in several subsequent meetings over the course of the project, the client would call something out and say, but what about? Weren't you going to whatever? And I was able to go right back to that same document and say, yes, that's user story number 22, and it's covered by these features, which we haven't talked about yet. Right? And then they were like, oh, okay. It wasn't like, oh, I don't trust you now. It was like, oh, okay, I should have known. And so it made that experience smoother. It doesn't mean it's going to be perfect, and it doesn't mean, for example, that when you give the end user tests and things to look at, that they actually will do it. So it's not foolproof, but it helps a lot, yes.
So you have your DTs, and you talk to an engineer to get his user story. You get the engineers. And get the engineers, you put in your user story. But the person that actually writes the check is the CFO who speaks English.
Mm-hmm.
How do you convert engineers to English in your user story?
It's in the goals. It's in the achievements that are written into the purpose of the user story. The reason you're doing this is in order to be able to this, and this. So I think that's really where the benefits are built right into the user stories. But that requires that you have organized a document in such a way that is focused on that, which is one of the things I liked about AI's executive summary. It did all that work for me. I mean, I would have spent, I'm sure it wouldn't have taken Steve very long at all to put that together, but for me, that would have been like, oh, I gotta go through it all. I gotta make notes. And AI just did that for me. And I think that was really helpful.
So you're saying you can have a CFO persona to look at the Firefly's output and an engineer persona, and then call the two different stories?
Okay, so I think you're asking a different question than I thought. But if you have a different perspective from a different role, that's a different user story. So as the CEO, I need to see yada yada so that I know the things I need to know, right? So that's tangentially, well, or directly related to the features that you're building for your end users, but the purpose is completely different. And that has an impact on us as developers in how we decide to build something. Is we're not just meeting this need, but this feature also has to support this user story as well, from the executive's perspective. I think that's really what you're describing.
I think that you're onto you're getting there. So what happens is in our business networking, engineers know what they need. They speak in jargon.
Mhm.
CFOs speaks in ROI, investment type of stuff, and there's no connection.
So,
Even though the problem is identified, there's no connection to how you make a profit with that.
okay, so one thing that might be helpful, and I did not include a slide on this in this presentation, is the difference between a user story and a use case. Your engineers are used to the use cases. Use cases are technical. They define the technical problem and the technical, the scenario in which you encounter this, and it's technical, and it's got a technical response, right? That's not a user story. So the user story and the design thinking is about getting to the reason why that technical use case is so important to this group of users, right? So your user story for them would still be more, I say this, touchy-feely. It's not, but compared to a use case, consider that the friendly, everyone can understand what this means, versus the use case that they're going to understand. So your user story would have to have, for example, acceptance criteria that defines what level of complexity or what level of whatever it is that we're talking about are we talking about here. But it's about what's trying to be achieved, not the how it's going to be achieved, or the technical circumstances under which it was necessary. That, I don't know if that helps, but
With a free presentation. Thank you.
thank you.
You should do the news.
I take too long, sorry.
The idea I'm taking from Mike's thing is we need to add, Mike's question is we need to add goals and ROI correlations to each user story so you can sum them up and it makes it easier for me to sell it to the CFO.
Yeah, exactly.
Mike wants to take nerd speak and convert that into money speak.
It's always the challenge.
Yeah.
for sure.
You might need
Yeah.
to look at an outside guy that can speak financial and go in there and chat with them. They can talk to them, sharing with you what they
So,
need.
you need a relationship with the engineer's goals and set up your piece so you can match them up to your user story and then go back up to the C-suite.
Yeah.
Because the C-suite's writing the check and the engineer just says, this is broke. The user's saying, well, this is what I need.
Mhm.
I say more than it's just broke.
Yeah, you say that.
They want the quarterly and how much did this cost? How much did we buy that? What did we sell that? All of those numbers generated at the same time and cut off at the appropriate day for those costs. That guy right there knows how to do it. Why wasn't he in? How's he gonna make it?
Yeah, so I would say that the design thinking process is not about the selling it.
Yeah.
It's about getting it right. It's about making the right decisions about what you're going to do. And sometimes it directs how you're going to do it. But it's more about, back to that earlier slide, it's about building the right thing, not about doing a good job. I mean, sure, we expect that you build good things, that what you build is good. But this is more about making sure that you're prioritizing the things that will in fact have impact. And while it may not be directly or immediately evident, happy end users will support happier CEOs, right? If they're having to deal with complaints all the time, they're going to come into this relationship with a very different attitude. So keeping the end users happy is the starting point. And this is about delivering things that are impactful for the end users. It doesn't mean you don't also need to sell it. And I agree, bringing that together, which if you look back at the slides and zoom in, take a look at those executive summaries and see how it was able to take, I didn't say anything, I didn't tell it about the project at all. I never said anything about the project in any of my prompts. It absorbed, it figured that out based on the user stories that I created. And it came up with, really nice, succinct description of, the purpose and the benefits. And they were in speak that I think could be shared with anyone.
Definitely write a program this weekend. Take those transcripts in. Chris will see it Monday.
Yeah, I was, I expected, for example, when I fed in the notes from one meeting, and it was like an hour and a half meeting or so, we fed in the notes. And I watched the whole meeting. I wasn't present, but I watched the whole thing, and I read the whole thing, and I wrote some notes that put like, 6 or 7 bullet notes that I wrote on a piece of paper. It came up with a table, like almost instantly. I uploaded this stuff, I pasted it in, and then I hit, update based on this. And it almost instantaneously came up with the table of all of the places where it needed to update user stories, an explanation of why, and specifically what that change would be, and a list of additional user stories that it thought were now needed. Now, I did have to refine that. I had to pull it back a little bit because during that meeting, we talked about things that are unrelated. They're not part of this project. They're tangentially related because maybe they result in information that's going to be used by this project, but they're not part of this project. So I had to tell back, say, no, ignore that. Ignore the fact that we said that the numbers and brackets aren't working right. We're going to fix that before we even start this project. So undo all the changes that you made here, and here, right? Which, by the way, I didn't have to go back and find the places where it had made the changes. It just knew what it had done, and it undid it for me, and we're all back to good. So again, very helpful.
Can you do any predictive response to it? Can we predictive?
I haven't tried that, and someone else can probably speak to that, but I haven't tried that.
So if you can put in all your transcripts, you should be able to forecast what the next question is.
What I can tell you is that it made recommendations for me that I wasn't expecting. Did you consider this? With your sort options, have you considered this? What about? And I see that you're using this kind of an icon to indicate that. Should you also be? So it had a lot of good ideas. Now, I didn't pick it up on all of them, but some of them were things I hadn't thought about that I thought were good ideas.
Thank you, Heather.
Great.
Thank you.